The slap came just as the string quartet swelled. A flash of heat. Then silence, split wide open like glass shattering underwater. Susan didn't move. Not at first. The sting bloomed across her cheek like a slow bruise, the taste of blood already at the corner of her mouth. Her father's breath hit her next, bourbon and something rotting underneath. His eyes burned with pride curdled into fury. "You selfish little girl," Anthony Howard growled, his voice low, thick. "After all we've done for you." She stared at him. No tears. No plea. Just that slow, dead stare that made him flinch, just a little. Her mother stood frozen by the melted ice sculpture, fingers gripping her champagne flute so tightly the stem cracked. But still, she said nothing. Not to defend. Not to deny. Just a faint shake of her head, "Don't make a scene." Too late for that. From across the warehouse floor, gutted and dressed up like some dystopian gala, cameras paused, mouths parted. Someone whispered, "Was that Susan?" Behind the flickering chandelier and rows of rusted beams wrapped in fairy lights, her brother Stephen leaned back in his chair, sipping vintage scotch like it was a game show prize. And he was smiling. Of course he was. They'd ambushed her 15 minutes earlier near a broken freight elevator they'd turned into a photo booth. A curtain, a fake wall of roses, and a demand. Hand over the penthouse. Emily had smoothed her designer sleeves like she was talking about drapes, not theft. Stephen and Margaret need a foundation. You live alone. Be reasonable. Reasonable. That familiar blade wrapped in silk. Susan had only blinked once before answering, flat, clear, no. Her father's voice had climbed then. Stephen had smirked. And now, his slap left a red echo humming in her bones. Susan finally turned. Not to flee. Just to deliver the verdict. "You'll regret this," she said. Loud enough for the head table. The DJ. The ghosts in the brick walls. All of you will. She didn't wait for silence to settle. Her heels cracked across the concrete floor like pistol shots. The makeshift floral arch blurred past. Guests averted their eyes. A bridesmaid gasped behind fake lashes. Outside, the wind scraped cold across her face. She welcomed it. Let it numb the sting. She didn't stop walking. Not toward the valet. Not toward the car. Just through shadows, into the rust-stained maze of the abandoned industrial district where they'd staged this avant-garde wedding. Her breath came short but steady. Her fingers twitched, but not from fear. Something inside her had clicked. Not snapped. Not fractured. Aligned. She didn't drive home. The penthouse, sleek glass, skyline view, once her fortress, felt too fragile tonight. Too haunted by everything she'd fought to build. And almost lost. Instead, she turned toward the harbor's edge. Toward the place where it all began. Juniper and Black used to be a shipping office. Now, it crouched at the end of a cracked wharf under a weather-beaten awning, its single lantern flickering like a lighthouse warning ships away. Inside, warm wood, low jazz, and Joshua. Joshua, always steady. Always watching. Never asking more than he had to. He looked up as she stepped in, soaked in salt wind and silence. His brow furrowed, barely, and his hand paused mid-glass polish. "You okay?" he asked, already reaching for her mug. She sat at the corner table by the warped window. Her lip was bleeding again. "My father hit me," she said. No drama. Just data. Just fact. At my brother's wedding. Because I wouldn't give them my penthouse. Joshua didn't react, not the way people do when they don't know what to say. He set down the mug, Black, 2 sugars. Then added a chocolate muffin. No charge. "You look like you need something solid." She didn't thank him. Just stared at the swirl of steam rising off the coffee. Her hands were steady, but her breath hitched once, quiet, contained. Outside, gulls screamed over the water like sirens. Inside, Susan Howard made a decision. She was done being the quiet one. The tide slapped against the dock like a warning. Susan sat in the corner booth of Juniper and Black, the cold mug untouched, the chocolate muffin still whole. Outside, the harbor lights stuttered on the water's surface, like a pulse, or a lie trying to hold shape. And somewhere in the stillness, she cracked open, not gently, not tearfully. It wasn't grief that spilled through. It was fury. A low, bone-deep kind of rage, the kind that doesn't scream. It builds. Quietly. Precisely. Like code. She had played their game for years. Excelled. Made herself small, sharp, capable. No mess. No need. And in return, they tried to strip her bare in front of 100 strangers and call it family. They didn't raise a daughter. They cultivated a resource. And now they were startled she refused extraction. Susan opened her laptop. No hesitation. Her fingers moved like they remembered something her heart had just relearned. She owed them nothing. Let them squirm. Let them wonder. The next morning, the sun bled through slate clouds over the skyline. Her phone buzzed just after 6. Ms. Howard, the doorman said. Your parents are in the lobby. Of course they were. No warning. No apology. Just an invasion dressed up as concern. Susan didn't rush. She moved with surgical calm, chose black slacks, a blouse the color of midnight, hair pulled back into a perfect line. Not armor. Proof. That she wasn't theirs anymore. When she opened the door to the hallway, her father was already pacing, restless, jaw tight, like the hallway should salute him. Where do you think you're going? Emily snapped, her voice brittle beneath a string of pearls. To work, Susan replied, locking the door behind her. Some of us still have incomes. Anthony stepped in fast, grabbed her arm. It was reflex, he didn't expect her to freeze, didn't expect the ice in her eyes. Touch me again, she said, voice level, and I'll have building security escort you out in cuffs. He paused. She didn't. There are cameras at the club. Crystal clear. Every angle. That stopped him. Just a flicker, but it was enough. Emily paled, knuckles white against her handbag. You wouldn't, she began. Try me, Susan said, turning toward the elevator. As the doors slid shut between them, she caught their expressions, confused. Not angry. Confused. Like they'd walked into the wrong script and couldn't find their Joshuas. They didn't follow. That was their first mistake. She didn't answer their calls. Not that day. Not the next. The voicemails piled up, desperate and familiar. Her mother first, wielding shame like a scalpel. Susan. Please stop this. You're humiliating us. Then Stephen, with that signature mix of smugness and feigned calm. You're being dramatic. Come talk. Like adults. And finally, Margaret, sweet, venomous Margaret. He deserves that place more than you. He's starting a family. Susan listened to each one, once. Then muted the thread. She didn't need their voices clouding her signal. Instead, she drove back to the only place that still felt real. The cafe. The harbor. The hum of purpose in the air. Juniper and Black smelled like roasted clarity. Joshua handed her the coffee without a word, his expression unreadable, but present. She nodded once. He nodded back. She opened her laptop. 3 tabs. One to her lawyer. One to her financial advisor. One to Hollow Shore Residences. The oceanfront tower Stephen and Margaret had drooled over. The one with the glass balconies and rain-sound showers. The one they planned to beg their way into. They saw a dream. Susan saw an acquisition. That afternoon, she submitted an offer, full price. Cash-backed. Discreet. She didn't need approval. She needed leverage. By dusk, the paperwork was in motion. By nightfall, she was rewriting back-end code for a real estate platform she'd quietly architected between freelance gigs and sleepless weekends. The same architecture Stephen once begged to collaborate on. He hadn't even understood the source files. She pushed a secure update to a private GitHub repo. Created access tiers. Tenant protocols. Data analytics. Automation modules. This wasn't revenge. This was strategy. Not destruction, design. They thought she was unraveling. That her silence meant surrender. But Susan wasn't falling apart. She was fortifying. They taught her to play by rules. Now she was writing her own. And they would feel it. Every brick. Every shadow. Every door they could no longer walk through. Brick. Fiber cable. Ironclad contracts. That's what I was made of now. They wanted my home. I was about to show them how little they understood what I really owned. 10 days of silence followed. Not peace. Not stillness. Just the white noise of people who didn't know how to be ignored. Blocked calls. Cousins suddenly just checking in. Instagram posts from Margaret, sharpened like blades in pastel fonts, nothing worse than selfish people pretending to be victims. I let them talk. I was busy. The offer on Hollowshore had gone through. The building, their dream, was mine in all but ink. Donna White, my lawyer, carved through the contracts like a scalpel through soft tissue. By the end of the month, I'd hold title to every inch of those sunlit hallways. But that wasn't what kept me awake at night. That wasn't the rot. No, the decay went deeper. Years ago, Stephen had come to me with his baby-faced grin and a half-formed crypto startup he called Oryx. He needed technical advice. Said it like we were partners. Said it like I should be flattered. I gave him more than he earned, mock-ups, back-end suggestions, even pieces of my own code architecture. Not to build for him. Just to inspire. He didn't build. He butchered. Slapped a new skin on my work and launched something barely stable enough to hold weight. It crashed, of course. Loudly. Publicly. Blamed on Joshua shifts. But last week, I dug into his old servers. He never changed his admin passwords. Of course he didn't. I found more than tech theft. I found laundering, cleaned money piped through dummy consulting firms, all funneled toward a single name. Howard and Associates, LLC. My father's quiet little empire. They hadn't just stolen from me. They'd used me as camouflage. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then picked up the phone. Rachel, I said, voice flat. If I report this to the SEC, it will bury them. Silence on the other end. Then, carefully. Do you want that? No, I said. I want them to stop pretending I'm still afraid of them. And then, one more thing. One email. One line. Subject, we should talk. Sent to my mother. She arrived the next morning, precisely at 9. Emily Howard is immaculate, armored in cream wool and pearls, like grief could be dressed into submission. She led with tears. Of course she did. Eyes rimmed pink. Lip trembling just enough. I let her perform. Then I turned the laptop. She froze mid-sentence. Her mouth half open, hands clasped in a rehearsed pose of contrition. But the numbers on the screen, the payments, the shell companies, the digital breadcrumbs, sliced through her like frostbite. You don't understand, she stammered. No, I said, calm as winter. You don't. Fraud isn't a misstep. And raising a son who weaponizes loyalty isn't parenting, it's complicity. She flinched. I closed the laptop. Softly. The sound echoed like a final gavel in a courtroom. We're only getting started. Emily didn't cry after that. The softness drained from her like color from an old photograph. What remained was calculation. Good. That I could respect. What do you want, Susan? She asked, voice clipped. The mask was back on, but it had fissures now. I met her gaze, really met it. Not as a daughter. Not as a disappointment. As an equal. As a threat. I want peace, I said. No more messages. No more cousins dropping by. No more curated sob stories on social media. Her eyes narrowed, but I wasn't finished. The penthouse is mine. Legally. Morally. End of discussion. My accounts, my work, my name off limits. And if we don't agree to that? I took a breath. Slow. Centered. I have the documents. The server logs. The payment trail. Video of Dad hitting me. Witness statements. I've backed it all up twice and sent it to people who don't owe me loyalty, just a headline. Her hands were still now. Very still. You'd destroy your own family, she whispered. I stood, the chair legs dragging like a knife across tile. No, I said. You did that. When you sold your daughter for your son's comfort. When you watched me bleed and checked the room for witnesses instead of wounds. She stared at me then, really stared. Something shifted in her face. Just slightly. A flicker of the woman who once held me in a thunderstorm, whispered lullabies off-key. But it wasn't enough. I turned the laptop toward the window. Closed it like sealing a vault. I'm not asking for anything unreasonable, I said. Just silence. Just distance. She stood. Gathered her coat. The pearls at her throat trembled, but her mouth never did. She didn't say goodbye. She just walked out. I watched her descend into the black sedan waiting outside, the door closing with a soft click. No slammed fists. No shouted names. Just silence. And this time, it belonged to me. 2 weeks passed like water under a frozen river, quiet above, pressure building beneath. No calls. No messages. Not even one of Margaret's Instagram parables about forgiveness wrapped in pastel fonts. But silence can be its own kind of siege. The first rupture arrived by email. Subject, Unit 14C, eviction complete. Stephen and Margaret had stopped paying rent. 2 months past due. No responses. Claimed clerical error. They didn't know the clerks now answered to me. The final notice they received, standard font, no flourish, bore my name in the owner field. They left at night. No fanfare. No tagged posts. Just vanished. Until Stephen texted. Mom told me what you're doing. You can't prove anything. I didn't answer. I attached a screenshot instead, server logs, user ID, IP timestamps, his signature file. Sent. No subject. His reply was almost immediate. What do you want? My response was simple. Silence. Separation. No more fictions disguised as love. He tried again. You've changed. I stared at the message, then answered. No. I remembered who I was before I had to survive you. I archived the thread. And I didn't look back. That night, I stood on the penthouse balcony. The sky was clean, the air sharp. Below, the city moved like a slow breath, unconcerned with my family's ruin. I had fought for years just to be left alone. Now I stood in the empire of my own making, and I felt, still. No hunger for revenge. No need to be heard. Only quiet. They tried to take what was mine. and lost the ground beneath them instead. 3 days later, the knock came. Not loud. Not demanding. Just unsure. I checked the feed. Anthony. Alone. Hands twitching in his pockets, shoulders slouched like someone waiting for judgment. I didn't need this scene. But I opened the door. He didn't try to smile. That, at least, was honest. "They're moving in with us," he said eventually. "Stephen. Margaret." Things fell apart. "I know," I replied. "I'm their landlord." He blinked. The math took a moment to finish behind his eyes. "You," he said. "But how?" "Because I learned to build while you were too busy covering Stephen's debt." He looked away. A long breath escaped him, dragged across whatever pride he had left. "We made mistakes." "No. You made trades. Sacrificed the child who didn't need you for the one who never stopped bleeding you dry." He nodded slowly, as if accepting a sentence. "I shouldn't have hit you. That was the least damaging thing you ever did." He took something from his coat. An envelope. "Your mother wants you to come. Birthday dinner." She insisted. I took it. Didn't open it. "If I show up, it won't be as your daughter. It'll be as the woman who outgrew your legacy." He didn't respond. Just stepped back, retreating into the hallway like a soldier dismissed. I closed the door behind him. Soft. But final. I waited 3 days before opening the envelope. No note. Just cream cardstock. Scripted letters. Emily Howard's 63rd birthday. Family only. Family. That word again. I almost laughed. I arrived late. 15 minutes after the salad had been served, after the theater of grace had begun. I wore black. Clean lines. Hair back. Not mourning. Not rebellion. Just power, made quiet. The restaurant was too ornate. Crystal glasses. White linen like a funeral for civility. Stephen and Margaret sat at the far end, smaller now. Less certain. She didn't look up. He glanced once, then looked away. Anthony's posture was perfect. But his hands trembled slightly as he lifted his water. My mother's smile stretched across the table before her voice could catch up. "Susan," she said, standing too quickly. "You came." I didn't answer. Just took my seat. Let them shift around me. Let them fill the silence with nervous forks and old jokes. I didn't speak until dessert. And even then, only this. "I'm not here to make peace. I'm here to observe who you become when you can't control the narrative." The table went still. Emily's smile faltered. Stephen's fork paused mid-air. Margaret stared at her plate like she might fall into it. No one answered. They didn't know what story they were in anymore. And I no longer needed to explain it. No one asked where I was going. No guilt. No eyes tracking my retreat. No cold voice hissing after me to stay seated and behave. I left my mother's birthday dinner without ceremony. No slammed doors. No declarations. Just a chair pushed back, a breath exhaled, and my heels disappearing into silence. And no one followed. That was the first time I felt it, not safety. Not satisfaction. Something better. Sovereignty. Months passed. The season shifted. The city thawed. The names I once flinched at, father, mother, brother, lost their grip. And then one evening, I hosted a dinner. Not a grand affair. Not some statement. Just a table on my balcony. My building. My rules. No family only etched in the invitation. No hierarchy. No performative forgiveness. Just warm lights strung above glass and steel. Roasted garlic curling through the breeze. The hum of jazz bleeding softly from inside. Joshua came, quiet as ever. Rachel arrived late, laughing at traffic and pouring her own wine without asking. Michelle, sharp-tongued and loyal, brought 2 bottles and a story for each. People who never demanded parts of me to validate my worth. People who stayed because they didn't need to own me to love me. We toasted as the city sparked to life below. To Susan, Joshua said, lifting his glass, eyes steady. Who turned a slap into an empire. I didn't flinch at the word. I smiled. Not out of triumph. Not to prove a point. Out of peace. The kind you choose. The kind you build with your own 2 hands, when no one else offers you room. They tried to take my home. But they gave me something far more permanent. A life without them. A voice that no longer waits for permission. And a table I didn't have to beg to sit at, because I built it. Choice. Not silence. Not surrender. Choice.